Okay, so in the last lesson, in place value, we talked about comparing the values of a digit. So I just want to go back there for one moment and do a quick review because the lesson that we did today really does build on top of that. Today's lesson is going to be comparing the value of an entire number with multiple digits in it. So for example, on the last lesson, we might have given you the number 23,125 and 46 hundredths. And I might have said, please compare the value of the digit 2. You guys underlined your 2's. You unpacked and you wrote that this was 20,000 being compared to 20. Part of unpacking, we discussed the difference in the zeros. So the difference in the zeros are these 3 zeros, meaning it's going to be the difference of 1,000 times. The value of these two are going to be 1,000 times different. So what I did today with my second class that my first class didn't see, so we drew some arrows. If I start here and want to change 20,000 into 20, my value is getting smaller, and we go back to this unpack number, this power of 10. We knew the easy one was this. We knew 20 times 1,000 gets me 20,000. So how do I do the opposite? How do I make this value, this large value, into this small value? And many of you would say, oh, you do the opposite. You divide by 1,000. And that's absolutely right. But we're going to find the equivalent to that, which was the same thing as multiplying by 1/1000th. All of you have that down. We talked about that. You've got that. So now what I want you to do when we unpack, the next step is to write a number sentence. This number sentence is one way to compare these values of these digits. We're going to follow the arrows. If my arrow starts here, I start there. 20,000 is, or times, excuse me. See how I'm following it? 20,000 times 1/1000th will equal 20. Let's follow the arrow the other way. Starting at 20 times 1,000 equals 20,000. So those are two ways to compare the value of the 2's. Now the next two ways to compare the value of the 2's is writing it in words. And in words, we read it backwards. You're used to reading left to right, but when we're taking these equations and putting them into words, we're going to read from right to left so that we have this part first. 20 is. And then just like we did yesterday, we followed with this. Or last time, rather. Going backwards. 1/1000th of 20,000. Remember, this is. I like to use all these colors of the rainbow. Is of. All right, so we're going to do the same thing here, working backwards. $20,000 is. Now this part. 1,000 times greater than 20. Real quick, I just want to stop for a moment. Take this out. We can all agree that 20,000 is greater than 20. Because we're comparing the value, I need to know how much greater. 20,000 is 1,000 times greater than 20. So we're just adding this little blip. You already knew 20,000 was greater than 20, but now I need to know how many times greater. So that's what we did last lesson. Now what I want to do is I want to talk about the lesson from this afternoon. I taught my afternoon class a little bit differently than my morning class because my morning class seemed to struggle. So I thought, what can I do a little different? So morning class, I hope that you are paying attention and following along because you're the ones that are going to need this more than my afternoon class. Afternoon class might get a little bit stuck, so pay attention too. So instead of comparing a digit, in this lesson, we're going to compare the value of the entire number. We're not just going to single out one digit this time. We're going to look at the entire number. First thing to think about here is every digit will be the same. The only difference is that the decimal would be in a different place. That is the only difference. And that decimal is what determines the value of each of our numbers. So here we go. Here's our example. 562 thousandths being compared to 56 and 2/10. Right here, there's no whole numbers. Right here, there's 56 in my wholes. So the first thing I want to talk about, we need to first of all unpack. So you'd write the word unpack. I want to know how many times different these numbers actually are. So I'm going to pick one. It doesn't matter which one I do, but one of these needs to tell me how many times different it is. So I'm just going to take this one. Right now, my decimal's between the 6 and the 2 here, but it's before the 5 here. So let's look. If I wanted to move this between the 6 and the 2, I had to move it 10 times for this hop and 10 times for this hop. What is 10 times 10? Well, it's 100. So right off the bat, right there, it tells me these numbers are 100 times different. That's going to be my value. The value is that they're 100 times different. So once I've unpacked and I figured this part out, I now need to write my two number sentences. So I ask myself, how do I go from a smaller value, I do my arrows, to a larger value? Well, if I need this to become this, smaller become larger, I'm multiplying by our unpacked number, 100. Because 562 thousandths times 100 should equal this. So I'm going to actually write that down. 562 times, 100 will equal 56 and 2/100. Now what if I want to go the other way? I need to make this number into this number. Well, everyone knows if I'm making a larger value into a smaller value, I am going to divide. I already have my unpacked number. It tells me I'd have to divide by 100, but we're not writing it like that anymore. We now also know that we can multiply by 1/100th, and that is the same thing as this. So let's write it. Starting with my new arrow spot, 56 and 2/10 times 1/100th should get me 562 thousandths. So do you see how I just followed my arrows? Now once I have my number sentence, I can do my words. Let's compare in words. We've now compared using numbers. Let's now compare using words. And we go and we read it left to right. So I start here. 56 and 2/10 equal sign is 100 times, oh, my pen's dying. $100 times greater than, just like on the last one, 562 thousandths. Remember, cover up 100 times. 56 and 2/10 is greater than 562 thousandths. Well, by how much? Our unpacked number, 100 times greater. All right, do the same thing here. Read it backwards. 562 thousandths is 1/100th of 56 and 2/10. And that's all we're doing. We're just taking the numbers and making them, putting them into words. It's that math language, academic language. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a whole nother one, and I want you to pause as we go, and you can start and stop to check yourself. All right? I'm going to get a different color. So here's our example that you're going to walk through on your own. Please start and stop the video to check and see how you're doing. We're going to compare. Oh, before I move on, one more thing. I noticed this morning and this afternoon a lot of kids saying that this was 20 times different. Remember, in powers of 10 and in the numbers in base 10 operation, to go from one digit to the next, we multiply by 10. If my number is getting larger, my value is getting larger. If my value is getting smaller, we divide by 10. So this is not 10 plus 10. This is 10 times 10, which makes it 100. All right. Now, here's my example. Stop and start as you go to see how you do. $129 and 51/100ths being compared to 12 and 951 thousandths. First things first, unpack. Then we will do our number sentence. And then we will do our 2-word sentences. So first of all, let's unpack. Right now, my decimal's between the 9 and the 5 here, and it's between the digits 2 and 9 here. If I want this one to look like this one, it has one place value difference, which is a 10 times difference. So that is our unpack number. It's going to be 10 times different. This number is 10 times different than this number, and this number is 10 times different than this number. Now let's figure out how that actually works. If I start here, I want to make this. This number, 129, is greater than this number, so I'm going to make it smaller. I would have to divide by 10, which is the same thing as multiplying by 1/10. Those are the same. And if I want to go the other direction, start here and make this, I've got 12 and 951 thousandths that needs to become larger to 129 and 51/100ths. Same thing. It's only changing 10 times. And I'm multiplying because my value is getting larger by 1 decimal place over. So now, pause it, see if you can do your number sentences. Check it when you're ready. I start with 129 and 51/100ths. I multiply it by 1/10, because remember, we're not doing it this way right now. And it should equal this. Come over here. Now I do the other ones. Follow this arrow. The difference in my lesson was the arrows. The arrows helped my other students. Times 10 equals 129 51/100ths. How did you do? Now we need to write these into words, and we work backwards. I'm going to start here. $12 and 951 thousandths is 1/10 of 129 and 51/100ths. Now we write our expression, our words for this one. 129 and 51/100ths is 10 times greater than 12 and 951 thousandths. I'm going to just double check it, cover this up. 129 and 51/100ths is greater than that? Absolutely is, by 10 times. And we are done. And that's it. Felt like there was something else I wanted to talk about with this, and now I can't remember what it was. It'll probably come to me once I turn this video off. What was it? I can't remember. Oh, I remember what I wanted to do. A lot of the kids are confused about this. So I want to take this over here for a moment. Okay. I want to prove to you guys that this is actually dividing by 10. Any number is simply over 1 as a fraction. So let's multiply. When you multiply fractions, you do numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So essentially, this is the same thing. Look, this right here is the same thing. Look, isn't this 129 and 51/100ths divided by 10? Isn't this the same as dividing by 10? We even mentioned it up here. That's all that it is. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. It's going to take practice. Sometimes the best things take hard work, dedication. You will get it as long as you practice. If you have any questions, make sure you let me know later.